Hello and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this breakout session on diversity data, what, why, and how. My name is Matt Cameron, and I'm the Global Managing Director of LGBT Great. So it's great to be speaking to you all today, and congratulations to the Diversity Project and a fantastic sort of virtual event. Now, for those of you who sort of don't know me, I've spent all of my career working with the investment and savings industry. And I'm sure you can all agree with me that we've got a lot of work to do in terms of improving our diversity data disclosure within our industry. So earlier this year, we teamed up with the Diversity Project and NICSCA Diversity Project North America to commission a groundbreaking study on diversity data in terms of our industry. So we're actually going to be bringing you an exclusive into what some of the initial findings from this are actually telling us. In addition to that, I'd like to take this opportunity to really sort of remind everybody actually in our industry how critical data is to everything that we do. So I guess just to connect all of the dots, LGBT Great is a program that works broadly across the investments and savings industry. And where we sort of focus our data and research work is in our sort of first research pillar, which you can see here. So we have sort of grown to the program now to lots of different organizations globally, lots of different types of investment savings firms within the industry. So I'd like to start off by inviting you all really to reflect on how critical data is within the sector that which we operate in. And we know that our entire ecosystem is built on data and the sort of the analysis of it. And sort of traditionally, we've placed a lot of resources into understanding sort of the behavioral patterns of our clients and investors. We've seen an increased push on ESG, of course, and corporate governance. So actually putting out more requests for good data from the clients and businesses that we invest in. And this really does, I think, create a good opportunity to stop and sort of ask ourselves, sort of why this is. And, we know that, within our business, the indicators that determine performance and success are, of course, exactly those which we want more of. And I think this ethos actually is really important when we consider our own diversity representation within our industry. We know that as a sector, obviously, we've got, huge, a huge journey to go on in terms of how we improve the representation of our workforce within the industry. 1% of our money managers are Black. Only 4% of investing decisions are made by women currently within the UK. So we've got a lot to do in terms of really shifting the dial, but of course we need to be able to measure and understand where are we currently and actually where do we want to be. So I guess a key message that I would like to sort of get across today is that there's never really been a better time to really be driving forward the progress of our diversity and inclusion agendas, within the industry and within our organisations. And let's just take a minute to reflect there on how our sort of working world has changed. We're for the first time we're 100% for most of us working from home. For the first time, it's a situation where we're recruiting and onboarding colleagues remotely using technology. And for the first time, we're conducting our engagement with clients and partners entirely via video. So I think this actually creates an opportunity for us to sort of critically ask ourselves the question, how are we reaching out to people in communities that we traditionally have perhaps struggled with in the past. And I know from our work this year with LGBT Great, obviously, of course, have moved to a 100% online model. We have seen over a 76% increase in engagement across our sort of online programs. Now, of course, we're really being challenged as a sector as well to sort of ask the question of how we can really sort of retain our sort of social license to operate. So we've seen a huge push now on the S within the ESG. Perhaps before we've been more focused on the E and the G. And of course, the birth of the Black Lives Matter movement and the development of other social injustice movements like trans and non-binary agenda are really sort of, forcing us to stop and think about actually what we can do to help sort of communities out there. And more critically, how we can reach those communities as well. And this is part of what our new program Allied is all about in terms of how we critically assess talent based on not only identity representation, that is diversity dimension, but also cognitive capability and behavioural science as well. And of course, all of these questions are being asked of our industry when it comes to culture regulation as well. So this year we decided to bring together an alliance of organisations, which you can see here, and including, of course, the fantastic Diversity Project. And we critically looked at sort of these 4 indicators. So we've been working on this over the summer period, and we've conducted a global sort of study now with a number of different partners. And we've been successful in securing responses from 40 different organisations, specifically within the buy-side sector. So let's take a quick look at what some of the data points are sort of telling us, and I'm going to share the foot of the first slide here. But I think what this really sort of shows us is that there's a real sort of lack of success from our industry actually around how we collect diversity data dimensions other than sort of gender and age at the time of recruitment. And actually, how can we build in other opportunities to collect that data throughout other parts of the talent management lifecycle? I think what's really pertinent about this sort of section as well, and these are, of course, only sort of initial views based on some analysis that we've done. But what we are sort of seeing is that, generally speaking, 3/4 of sort of candidates applying for roles within our industry are preferring not to say. So it really does beg the question of how we can ensure as an industry we are communicating effectively and providing those opportunities where we can for people to disclose the diversity dimension. I'll just quickly draw your eyes there to the 68%, which you can see. And of course, when we talk about intersectional identity, very important that we really look at this, because again, 3/4 or almost 3/4 of the industry is not sort of analysing the diversity data based on sectional identity. So to give you an example, Amazon, they have a very, I guess, a bird's eye view down, a very diverse business in terms of representation of women, gender identities, and Black, ethnic and minority communities as well. But it's only when we really get into the data that we really discover that actually the main majority of those groups are in frontline positions, so not in the leadership role. So again, it creates that insight that enables us to develop that action around what we can do to really improve the dial. So diversity data are incredibly important at highlighting what we do need to do. I guess if we take into consideration as well that 73% of organisations said that they don't believe that their current level of disclosure represents their workforce, thought quite a compelling stat there. And obviously seeing some key barriers here around trust, confidence, education around why the data is needed. Now, the good news is that it's not necessarily been all sort of doom and gloom, and we have seen some really good initiatives in our member firms, really starting to create the conversation and really successfully connecting the request for the data, that is the numbers, with the story of why it matters. And we've seen some really good examples in organisations such as St. James's Place Wealth Management and our member Quilter as well, around things that we're doing in terms of interventions at leadership level to really help improve disclosure. I guess what was quite surprising to me, if we take that sort of 73% and then we compare that with 72% of CEOs or organisations that say that CEOs are sort of sponsoring and advocating for diversity data, it really just asks the question of actually how are we really doing that, and actually what are the opportunities to do it differently. And it sort of really just suggests to me as well that there is a good opportunity there to find some really practical things and learn some best practice from what we're seeing in other organisations that really critically works. I guess it will probably not come as a surprise to you that main focus of when we talk about diversity in our industry is around gender, followed by race and sort of sexual orientation. But I think what's really exciting is that for the first time, we are seeing a real focus now around inclusion. Typically, we've focused around diversity dimensions and been focused on the numbers within our sector, and of course, has kind of been driven by gender pay gap reporting and other sort of legislation. But what we are seeing now is a much more concerted effort around inclusion, and that is feelings. How are our employees coping? What is the mental well-being of our colleagues, and how are we all supporting each other through this crisis? And I think this is really exciting because it creates an opportunity to provide the culture that's needed to really enable the diversity to happen. And I do believe that diversity is a business enhancer, but inclusion critically is the multiplier. So a really good opportunity to take stock of what we're doing actually around creating that culture around our sort of diversity data collection. So a couple of things to leave you here before we jump into the Q&A, but there is definitely an opportunity now to get some really good thinking and to create some really good sort of practical actions of things that we can do to shift the dial forward. And on behalf of LGBT Great and the diversity metrics work stream of the diversity project headed by Joe Livermore, we do want to invite you to work with us actually on what the data points are telling us and what the insights are telling us. So we can create the practical recommendations and the toolkit needed to really leverage this agenda forward. But I think a key point here is around if we can get better data, we've got a much better probability of sort of diagnosing actually where the barriers exist for minority groups and actually creating the actions that will result in progress. Thank you.